Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Old Time Rock and Roll. I'm your host, David Tear, and this video is part two of a two-part series on song number 2907 of my personal top 3,000 songs of the rock era from 1954 to 1999, which is Everybody's Talkin' by Nilsson. I don't know if you guys watched the first part. I briefly talked about the song very first. I'll just briefly go over it again. It was top 10 song from 1969 by Harry Nilsson. And it was used in a very popular movie, which I didn't care for. Here's a picture of Nilsson, by the way, Harry Nilsson. Pretty ugly guy with a cigarette in his mouth. I don't know. I mean, he had a few good songs. I'm not going to go into his history. I featured another song by him about 3 weeks ago called Coconut. And I think I talked about his musical history in detail in that one, so I don't want to repeat it. But, suffice it to say, he was a pretty good artist. He had some good songs, but I'm not too crazy about the one I'm featuring here. Everybody's talking, but I'm even less crazy about the movie. Midnight Cowboy. I just watched it last night. I've only seen it a couple times. I've watched it. It's a very depressing movie. I mean, it's about these, I forget the name of the actor on the left. He's the Midnight Cowboy. He moves from Texas to New York City. He tries to make a living as a male prostitute, and I guess Dustin Hoffman, the guy on the right, that's his manager. Kind of his pimp. And it's a very, very sad movie. I mean, these guys are just so down and out. It's just kind of hard to imagine how down and out they are. And I don't even really know exactly what the point of the movie is. I mean, I want to go into the movie in detail. Just suffice it to say, I think it was the worst pick that the Hollywood Academy ever came for Best Picture. It was won the Best Picture award for 1969, if you can believe that. And I think there's only one Best Picture I can think of that was as bad as that one, probably even a little bit worse, and that one's Silence of the Lambs. That won Best Picture from 1991. But what I've been doing this two-part series is I've been doing kind of my personal review. I'm also a movie buff besides being a rock and roll trivia buff. I love a lot of old movies. I love classic movies, even some new movies. I think I prefer the older ones a little bit. I mean, not really, really old. I haven't seen very many movies from the 1930s. I think most movies from the 30s were pretty silly. They were mostly just about rich people because everybody was really poor during the Depression. And as you know, everything from the 20s and before was all silent. And I'm not saying there weren't any good silent movies. Charlie Chaplin was a genius. He did some really amazing silent films. Uh, but I don't cover the 20s and 30s. I haven't seen too many movies from that era. It's before my time. I mean, I was born in 1962, so most of these movies were made, or a lot of these were made before I was born. I still think a lot of them were excellent. Um, I don't know if I consider that there was a heyday of cinema. I think there've been good and bad movies in pretty much every era, including today. Weird thing about movies, before I go on in my list, I think the best movies come out in the worst of times. I mean, there were some great movies in the 1930s. Two of my favorites were the two on this list, You Can't Take It With You and The Wizard of Oz. Also, Gone with the Wind was really excellent. There were a lot of excellent movies in the 30s, and I guess it kind of makes sense because everybody was so down and out, they were going to the movies to get away from their real life. And I guess that was a golden opportunity for Hollywood to come up with some really fantastic movies, a lot of which have remained classics. Kind of makes sense. And if you look at like the 50s and 60s, there were a lot of bad movies then. I mean, there were some good ones, but there was a lot of trash in the 50s. People kind of stopped going to the movies in the 50s, which isn't a big surprise because that's when TV came out. I mean, TV was just as bad as movies, probably even worse. But people didn't have to go to the movies anymore in the 50s. They could just stay home and watch all this shit on TV. And that was true in the 60s too. So there were a lot of crappy movies in the 50s and 60s. There were some good ones. I mean, I think some of the best musicals were actually made in the 50s and 60s. You can't generalize any era. 70s had a lot of really good movies. And the 70s was another crappy time, like the 30s. Kind of makes sense. 70s, we had all the disaster movies. Some of them were really good, like Jaws and The Towering Inferno. Uh, some of the airport movies were okay. One thing I don't like about the 70s, they made a lot of really violent movies in the 70s. I don't know how people started getting into violence in the 70s, but they did. And I was never a big fan of violent movies. I mean, I like a few violent movies if they have a point. If the point isn't just watching a lot of violence, then there are some really good ones. Clockwork Orange is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's not on this list. I love Stanley Kubrick. I mean, I think he's a master of cinematography. I mentioned three of my favorite directors of all time last time. Stanley Kubrick was one of them. I'd also have to say Frank Capra and Alfred Hitchcock. There were some other great ones too, like Steven Spielberg did some really great movies. There were a number of really great directors, but those are some of my favorites. Anyway, I went through. This is the first part of the list. I did this last time. I forgot to mention one thing last time. I glossed over what was my favorite movie from 1969 because I got so wrapped up talking about kind of lambasting Midnight Cowboy that I forgot to mention the movie that I think was the best movie of that year. And then this might surprise a lot of you, but I think Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice. That's my favorite movie from 1969. I mean, yeah, both of them had a lot of sex in them, but at least Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice ended on a happy note, with a foursome. I mean, I used to want that myself. I don't think I do anymore, but I don't know if that's possible to have kind of a foursome couple surviving as I guess, what do you call that? Kind of a extended marriage or whatever. I just don't think that's possible. It'd be kind of nice if it was. But I do like that movie. It's a very lighthearted, kind of comedy. I don't know if you can really take it seriously. It's about these kind of swingers, these free spirited people. They go to Esalen at the beginning of the movie. They're into all this new age thinking, and I guess they're kind of unhappy as couples. And of course, in the '60s, everybody was fooling around. So they decide to do the same, and there's all this jealousy throughout most of the movie because both couples are cheating. But finally, at the end, they decide, why don't we all sleep together, all four of us? And they do. And it works out fine for everybody. I thought it was a very interesting premise. And there's probably some people that's worked for. I don't know of any personally, but it was an interesting idea. Like I said, I don't know how realistic it is. I used to want that myself. I don't anymore now. I just want to marry the right woman and live happily ever after with her, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, so that was the one I overlooked. And let's get to the second part of my list. So now we're up to 1980. And the movie that was picked for Best Picture of 1980 was Ordinary People. It was a good movie. It was very sad. It was a very intense drama. I thought it was overrated. I mean, tragic story. This kid, loses his brother in a boating accident. He feels all guilty about it, but his parents, or at least his mom, thought that the wrong kid died. She treats him like shit and acts like nothing happened. And the whole movie's kind of about how the drama gets resolved. Sad movie. I mean, it ends pretty happy because the father finally comes to his senses and divorces the mom, who's played by Mary Tyler Moore. Very big switch in roles. I mean, I used to watch the Mary Tyler Moore show. I love that show. She was great in that show. She was just this really cheerful news reporter and kind of a one of the new feminists of the '70s. She kind of set the stage for a lot of feminism in the 1970s. And here she comes out with a movie which was about the worst bitch you can imagine. And what's interesting is the movie that I picked for Best Picture of 1980 is The Blues Brothers. I love The Blues Brothers. I mean, this has got to be one of my favorite comedies I've ever seen in my life. And it's a very, very different movie from Ordinary People, which is really serious. But I mean, I love it. Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi at their best. And the funny thing about this is that I don't know who's a bigger bitch, Carrie Fisher and the Blues Brothers, or Mary Tyler Moore and Ordinary People. Maybe you guys can tell me what you think. But anyways, let's keep going. So 1981, the one that Hollywood picked for Best Picture that year was Chariots of Fire. I wasn't crazy about Chariots of Fire. I only saw it once. I know the song. The song became really popular because of this movie. I think it even went to number one. but it was never one of my favorite songs. Do 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 do, kind of annoying slow musical, I think. But it kind of became synonymous with victory because of this crazy movie. No, I wasn't crazy about the Chariots of Fire, but the one I did pick for was My Dinner with Andre. My Dinner with Andre is a very good movie. I don't know how many guys have seen it. It's a movie just about two friends who get together for dinner, and the whole movie is just about their conversation together. I mean, and they have a really, really deep and meaningful conversation. How many people do that? And, to make a movie about just a single conversation over dinner, you wouldn't think that would work, but I think it worked really great. There's a few movies like this that all take place in the matter of a few hours. Another example of that was 12 Angry Men. I featured that one yesterday. That was what I thought should have been Best Picture for 1957. And American Graffiti all takes place in one night. I mean, movies don't have to take a long time span. They could just be one day or one special day or one special night in people's lives. And I guess My Dinner with Andre is an example of that. 1982, this one I did agree with, Gandhi. Gandhi is an amazing movie. Gandhi was an amazing man. Actually, Gandhi is one of my idols. Uh, Amazing what he did. I mean, he led, I think, probably the first civil rights movement in the world. Amazing. This guy, without violence, he led a campaign of civil disobedience against the British Empire, and was able to get gain India's independence against Britain. Pretty damn amazing he was able to do that. I mean, and the movie depicts kind of what he did. It's an excellent movie. And he influenced Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King led, probably the second greatest civil rights movement in the world. Of course, the whole integration movement, the whole movement for civil rights, Negro rights, and other people's rights in America. And he did it without violence too. And I love what he did. I'm not happy with Malcolm X. Malcolm X advocated violence. He basically advocated terrorism, kind of like the PLO's been doing and Hamas has been doing. I'm not an advocate of any kind of violence. I mean, in my mind, both Gandhi and Martin Luther King proved that we can affect any kind of change we want without violence. I am nonviolent. I hate violence. That's one reason I really don't like violent movies in general. I wish we didn't have violence in our society. You know. Um, but anyway, that's enough of that. But Gandhi's an amazing movie. He was an amazing man. He had one of the best quotes I know of anybody. He said, "We must be the change we wish to see in the world." I think I even said that quote yesterday, and I agree with that. If we want to live in a better world, we have to make it better ourselves. Um, we can't leave it in the hands of powerful people who want to have their way, which is kind of what we've been doing lately. Anyway, enough of that. 1983, 1984. I didn't see the one that they Hollywood. I think it was Terms of Endearment. I've watched parts of it. It looked horrible. I don't know why they picked Terms of Endearment. I'm never gonna watch that movie. It just looked too terrible to me to even think about watching it. I'm not a big fan what's her name? The actress in that movie. She was also in Around the World in 80 Days. I can't think of her name right now. I think she's an overrated actress. She was also in The Apartment. Why can't I remember her name? Shirley MacLaine. I don't think Shirley MacLaine is even that pretty. Um, Funny, my mom always thought she looked like Shirley MacLaine, and maybe she does. I never really thought my mom was all that pretty either. She was pretty beautiful when she got married, but then she dyed her hair blonde, and she's too much of a powerhouse. You know, I mean, the only pretty pictures I've seen of her were right after she got married to my dad. She kind of looked like Jackie Kennedy then. But anyway, enough of that. But no, I didn't see Terms of Endearment. I'm glad I didn't. I did see the no the movie they picked for Best Picture of 1984. That was Amadeus. That was a wonderful movie, and that's also my pick for 1984. I mean, Mozart. He's got to be one of the most tragic figures that I know of. I mean, his music was amazing. And I don't know if the story's true or not, probably not. I don't know if I wanna spoil the movie. The movie's about his rival Salieri, who is just extremely jealous of Mozart because he knows that Mozart is the best composer in the world. And, the way they depict him in the movie, I don't know how much truth to this, but Salieri was also really jealous because, Salieri considered himself a good Christian, a very respectable man who honored God and Jesus and all that. And Mozart, according to him, was this playboy, just really, really, kind of, just wheeling and dealing and having fun with all the women and just really vulgar. And I guess Salieri couldn't understand why God chose Mozart to be the greatest musician in the world, and he wasn't a very good musician himself, even though he was more well revered when he was alive. So it's all about his jealousy and how he ends up getting even with Mozart, getting even with God, basically, for making Mozart his chosen musician. Very very good movie. I don't know how much truth there is to it, but very 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 good and very sad movie. But I really love that one. What's next? 1985. They picked Out of Africa. I didn't care for that movie. I think I said yesterday I'm not a fan of Meryl Streep. She's another actress I don't like. I don't know who I think is less good looking, Meryl Streep or Shirley MacLaine. I think they're both pretty ugly. But no, I don't like Meryl Streep. But not only do I not think she's very pretty, I also think she's a pretty lousy actress. I think she acts too high and mighty in her movies. Um, yeah, I don't know. I just didn't like Out of Africa. I liked the scenes of Africa. That was the only thing I liked about that movie. I liked the scenes of all the wild animals and the African safari and the birds flying and all that, but I didn't really like the story. I don't know why they didn't pick Back to the Future. Back to the Future has got to be one of my favorite movies of all time. I mean, I am a sci-fi fan. I'll grant you that. But Back to the Future, that's got to be the best movie ever made about time travel. And I've seen some other really good ones. I saw The Time Machine, and I saw Time After Time. Those are both excellent movies, but Back to the Future knocks them all out of the water. I mean, just so entertaining. It was amazing. And I don't know why they didn't even nominate Back to the Future for Best Picture of 1985. I don't know why. Uh, I mean, that's got to be one of my top 10 favorite movies of all time. Easily my favorite. Well, not my favorite sci-fi. That would be 2001, maybe in Star Wars too. Like I said, I'm a big sci-fi fan, but Back to the Future got to be one of the best movies. And shame on the Academy for not even nominating that one, in my opinion. What's next? 1986, Platoon. Platoon was okay. I mean, Platoon, I guess a lot of people said that was the first realistic movie about Vietnam. And it was good. It was very, very hard to watch. I mean, it was a horrible war. And I guess there was a lot of horrible stuff going on during the Vietnam War, and Platoon makes this very, very clear. And it's just so hard to watch. I mean, I watched it 1.5 times. I saw it when it first came out. I watched the whole movie. I tried to watch it again about a year ago. I shut it off right after they started massacring the whole Vietnamese village. They started killing like this innocent village, just all these poor women and children. They kill everybody in that village, and I couldn't even watch that. But that was going on in Vietnam. Vietnam was the one of the biggest massacres in history, and we did it. And shame on the USA for doing that. I mean, it was bad enough that we lost about 60,000 troops in Vietnam. But what about all the 2 million we killed? I mean, come on. It was just a horrible thing, you know. Um, in a way, I'm glad I was born when I was. Sometimes I wish I was born 10 years earlier so I could have experienced the 60s in all its glory. But there's a good chance I might have had to go to Vietnam. I'm really glad I didn't. I don't think I would have had the sense to go, but a lot of people did, and a lot of people thought they were doing the right thing by going. My uncle even tried to enlist for Vietnam. They wouldn't take him because he was nearsighted. He was wearing contact lenses. It's a good thing they didn't take him. I never understood my uncle, really. I'm getting sidetracked here. My uncle was one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life, but he was kind of out of Leave It to Beaverland. I mean, he was born in 1945. He was kind of the height of the whole anti-war generation. I don't, he hated the hippies, he hated the demonstrators, and he even tried to enlist for Vietnam. And I don't understand that. I mean, he was delusional about it. He didn't know what was really going on. I mean, I guess he just had a lot of blind loyalty to America, which a lot of people did at that time. And I just think it's sad. I'm glad he didn't go. Um, I guess the most affection I think he had for the 60s was he was a big fan of Bob Dylan. He also liked the Beatles, but he preferred the 50s music and some of the early 60s. He loved the Beach Boys. He really didn't like the psychedelic stuff, and he didn't like the anti-war music. Um, I totally disagree. I think that's part of what made the 60s great. But anyway, let me just continue. So that I didn't really care for Platoon, even though it was about Vietnam. You guys are probably gonna laugh at the one that I thought should have been Best Picture of 1986. Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. I'm a big Trekkie. Okay, I'm not ashamed to say that. The original series I'm not that crazy about. I don't like William Shatner. William Shatner is probably one of the worst actors I know of. Sorry if you're listening, William Shatner, but he just was not a good actor. And I think the only reason he was popular on that show was he was sexy. A lot of girls thought he was really sexy. But he kind of ruined the original series, in my opinion. It was a good premise. I mean, Gene Roddenberry was amazing. The whole premise of Star Trek's amazing. And actually, I think something like that's going to probably happen. I mean, and it's interesting because Star Trek, at least the original series, took place in the 22nd century. The next, or 23rd century. The Next Generation took place in the 24th century. I think we might get something like that by then. But first, like Steve Miller said, you got to go through hell before you get to heaven. We're going to have to go through hell first. We're already starting to go through it in this century, the 21st century. Sorry to say it, folks, but I think the 21st century is going to involve a lot of hell. But I think if we do the right things, we will get through it, and we will have a wonderful Star Trek-like future. At least I hope we do. Anyway, that's all I want to say about that. But the voyage home I like because they actually go back to the late 20th century in that one, and they save the whales, and that ends up saving humanity. You have to see the movie to see what it's all about. But I think it has a good message, kind of like The Day the Earth Stood Still. One of my favorite sci-fi movies. Anyway, what's next? 1988, Rain Man was picked as Best Picture. It's a good movie, but it was about a guy on the spectrum. He was a low functioning autistic guy, and Dustin Hoffman does an amazing acting job in this movie. I mean, I think that's a really hard role to play an autistic person, but I think he does a really good job. And by the way, I'm on the spectrum too, but I'm more high functioning. I'm what was used to be called an Aspie. I have Asperger's syndrome, which is now called high functioning autism. And the good thing about being an Aspie is that people who are more high functioning, they do learn to compensate for the fact that they don't have this natural gift of being able to connect with people the way that neurotypicals do. We use a different part of our brain. And by the time I was in my 30s, I was able to do that. That's when I started being able to socialize, and pick up on things, pick up on social nuances and slang and facial expressions and all that. I'm still working on it. Rain Man, Dustin Hoffman does a great job. I mean, like I said, he's low functioning. He has no clue as to what's really going on, but he's like a human calculator. I mean, he could, he's faster than a calculator. He calculated a irrational square root in a second, faster than Tom Cruise could punch it on his calculator. I mean, I think there are some, a lot of people on the spectrum are savants. I think he did a good job acting as a savant, and he could count the matches on the floor in a second. I'm not that good, and I couldn't do the calculation he did in that movie, but I can multiply two 3-digit numbers in my head. And I think the fact that I'm going through all these movies the last couple of days shows I have kind of a photographic memory. I've seen 56 out of 97 of the Best Picture Award movies, and I remember each one. And some of them I've only seen once. So, how many people do you know that can do that? I mean, and I think it's good that I know how to do that. There's advantages to being on the spectrum. That's what a lot of people don't realize. And we're more logical. Yeah, maybe we're a little too literal, but we're more logical. We think logically. I'm a mathematician. I am a math genius. Not only can I multiply two three-digit numbers in my head, but I have a PhD from UC Berkeley in algebraic number theory. I'm running a Dave's Math channel. I'm trying to start a math school now. I just launched it. I hope some people join it. I'm trying to do what I can with math. I even think I had an epiphany from God a couple years ago to teach math. That's what he wants me to do with the rest of my life. Maybe not as dramatic as the epiphany the Blues Brothers had about starting a blues band for an orphanage in the inner city of Chicago and wrecking half of the city in order to do it. But I think I do have a purpose from God, and I intend to fulfill it. So anyway, that's what I believe. Enough about that. But yeah, Rain Man was a good movie. Not my favorite of the year. Close second, I'd say, to Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I loved Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Another movie directed by the same guy who directed Back to the Future, Robert Zemeckis. And as a matter of fact, it also had Christopher Lloyd. Christopher Lloyd, he was he's kind of the crazy scientist in the Back to the Future series. He was also the bad guy in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. He was the bad Toon, the Toon that had the crazy idea of tearing down Toontown to build the LA freeway. And the funny thing about this movie is that it basically came true. I mean, his crazy vision, the crazy tune. He wanted to build this whole big freeway through LA, in the 50s, and that actually happened. And LA used to have the best public transportation in the world, but it got torn down for their freeway. So it kind of came true. His nightmare vision came true. Think about that a little bit. Of course, the tunes aren't real, but maybe they're kind of real in our minds. That's why the movie was so popular. It was based on a lot of Looney Tunes, and there's some very funny scenes in that movie. They did a good job, kind of spoofing Looney Tunes and Disney, and I think it was excellent. Um, and what's next? 1989, Driving Miss Daisy. That was okay. I saw that movie. It wasn't a bad movie. It was okay. But I didn't think it should have been Best Picture. I mean, Best Picture I thought for 1989 was When Harry Met Sally. This is an amazing movie. This one wasn't even nominated by Hollywood, and I don't even know why. When Harry Met Sally, I think that is my second favorite romantic comedy I've ever seen in my life. My favorite is Breakfast at Tiffany's. And I didn't mention Breakfast at Tiffany's because I think that was the same year as West Side Story. West Side Story I liked a little bit better, but Breakfast at Tiffany's is an amazing movie, and I think When Harry Met Sally is too. And it was directed by Rob Reiner, who used to be on All in the Family. He's actually the son of Carl Reiner, who was another very, very famous comedian and became a director. He directed some really good movies too, including The Jerk. I do like The Jerk. His father directed The Jerk, and some other good movies too. And Rob Reiner directed a lot of really great movies. Another great one of his was This Is Spinal Tap. He's even in that movie. And I think he did a few other really good ones too. But anyway, no, I love When Harry Met Sally. I just think I mean the chemistry between Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan in that movie is amazing. It's funny because they almost seem like exact opposites at the beginning of the movie, and they kind of are. I mean, he's just real, just kind of easygoing jerk, and kind of gets his way with whatever women he wants, and Sally's just the opposite. She's just really uptight, kind of stuck up woman, and They end up living in New York together, and they bump into each other a few times. They can't stand each other when they bump into each other, but finally they become friends for about a year, and then they end up falling in love. I don't want to give away the whole movie, but I think it's an excellent movie. I would highly recommend you guys see that if you haven't already. Uh, so anyway, that's the one I think Hollywood should have picked for Best Picture of 1989. And then what's next? 1990. Oh, this is my second least favorite Best Picture. The Silence of the Lambs. A horribly gruesome, violent movie. Horrible story. I mean, Jodie Foster's good at it as an FBI agent. That's about the best thing going for the movie. But she collaborates with this cannibal to try to catch this other really sicko, this guy who clips off the skin of his victims to make a suit to turn him into a woman. I mean, just a very bizarre and very horrible story. And the sad thing about this movie is that my grandma, I was living with my grandparents when this movie came out. I lived with my grandparents for about a year, 1990, 1991. This is after things didn't work out for me in Chicago. I was trying to get back on my feet, so I was living with my grandparents. My grandma was in her 80s. She loved the movies too, and she always wanted to know what movie won Best Picture, and she always wanted to see it. And when she found out that Silence of the Lambs won Best Picture of 1991, she wanted to go see it. And I had to beg her not to see it. I mean, I think it literally probably would have killed her if she went to see it. She did see The Unforgiven, and that was bad enough for her. That was a pretty violent movie, too. But I don't think she could have made it through Silence of the Lambs. Shame on Hollywood for picking that movie as Best Picture you know. But anyway, enough of that. The movie I thought what should have won for 1991 was Beauty and the Beast, and actually this one was nominated. This was the first cartoon, the first animated film ever nominated for Best Picture. And I remember when I watched it, I was so awed by this movie. I mean, this movie had to have the best animation I'd seen in any movie I'd ever seen in my life up to that point. I don't know if they used CGI. I think this was before CGI. But I just remember the scene when they're dancing together and they show a whole panorama of the whole ballroom while they're dancing. And it was just so amazing to me. I mean, I still think it's one of the best animated movies ever made. And the story is excellent too. It's an excellent fairy tale story, and it has a really good message, which is kind of be yourself and fall in love with the right man. It doesn't matter how ugly they are, as long as they have a good heart. If they're beautiful inside, that's all that counts. Not like Gaston, who was a big macho honcho of France. All the women went nuts over him. Belle didn't give a shit about him, and good for Belle. Belle had some good sense. Belle went for the right man, and when she finally broke the spell, he became a handsome prince, and they lived happily ever after. Excellent story, excellent movie. So anyway, that I think should have won Best Picture. And 1992, The Unforgiven. I already mentioned that one. That was Clint Eastwood. I like a lot of Clint Eastwood movies. I wasn't crazy about this one. He was already really old when he made it. And he couldn't even get on his horse. That was the main thing I remember for that movie. It was a Western. I didn't think it was a very good movie. I don't even remember the story very well. I just remember it was a Western. And, he's famous for a lot of Westerns. He was in all the spaghetti Westerns in the 60s, like A Fistful of Dollars and For a Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Hang 'em High, The Outlaw Josie Wales. He was in some good Westerns. He was also, I liked the Dirty Harry movies, I liked, I think I like Magnum Force the best of the Dirty Harry movies. I wasn't so crazy about the first one, Dirty Harry, because it had too much of a right wing message. I think the bad guy in that was supposed to be Charles Manson, and I didn't like how they depicted him. I mean, there are sickos like that, but I think they exaggerated their point. I think they were trying to make the point that our society's too liberal. We let people like that go. I don't think that's really true. I think they overemphasized the point that that Clint Eastwood was just this cop that was determined to put him to justice at all costs. And the reason I like Magnum Force better was because it had a more liberal message. It was like, the police force can go bad too. And they are now, I think. I mean, now the police force is really racist and, they're not just. And, sometimes they need someone to set them straight. I think Clint Eastwood did a good job with that in Magnum Force. And one thing I like about Clint Eastwood, even though he's a tough guy actor, he's probably my favorite tough guy actor because he usually looking out for the little guy in his movies, and that appeals to me about him. I think my favorite of his movies I ever saw was Bronco Billy. I love that movie. That's not on my list here, probably because it wasn't my favorite movie of the year. But I loved Bronco Billy. I hated Every Which Way But Loose. Very, very stupid movie. And the other movie I really didn't care for with Clint Eastwood was Heartbreak Ridge, which is a very pro-war movie. It kind of glorified our invasion of Grenada. I didn't like that one either, but I have liked most of the movies I've seen with Clint Eastwood. Like I said, he's my favorite tough guy actor. Most tough guy actors I hate. I hate John Wayne. John Wayne's probably my least favorite actor of all time, by the way. Even though he's probably the most successful Hollywood actor of all time, I never got into the old westerns, and I hate him as an actor. And I'm not a big fan of westerns in general. I don't like most tough guy actors. I really hate Arnold Schwarzenegger too. There's only one movie I ever saw with Arnold Schwarzenegger that I liked, and that was Twins. He was good in Twins. So was Danny DeVito. But I hated the Terminator. I mean, the Terminator. I think that was the scariest movie I've ever seen in my life. I think it's also one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. You know, I don't believe anything like that's ever going to come true. And it's hard to believe he was governor. He was governor of California. I don't even know what he did as governor. He was a horribly conservative Republican governor, and he was married to a Democrat. And I don't think he really did anything substantial as governor. People are stupid. But anyway, enough of that. So yeah, I didn't pick Unforgiven for Best Picture of 1992. The one I did pick was Schindler. Oh no, that was the next year. Sneakers. I don't know how many guys saw Sneakers. I love Sneakers, and I think something like that could actually happen. I don't think it was that popular movie. Maybe I should tell you guys what it's about. It's about these guys. They're a group of they were former kind of just sort of computer hackers. I mean, it starts out with Robert Redford and his friend. I forget who plays his friend. Uh, Maybe Ben Kingsley. I think it was Ben Kingsley. They're like partners in crime in the late '60s for fun. They crack into they hack into the computer systems, and they're able to transfer money, like they're able to get money away from Richard Nixon when he was president. But then Kingsley gets caught and he gets sent to jail for 12 years, and Robert Redford gets away because he went to order a pizza. And then he kind of has to go incognito after that because he's wanted by the police. So he joins a group of other hackers, including Sidney Poitier and I think what's his name, River Phoenix was even with him. And Dan Aykroyd, I think. So there's this group of 7 hackers, and they stumble across the ultimate code breaker. It turns out that this mathematical genius figured out a way to break any crypto system in the world. This movie was made in 1992. I guess they cracked RSA. I might as well tell you guys. RSA is the most secure crypto system in the world. It's based on the difficulty of factoring the product of 2 large primes. Nobody's figured out a fast way to do that. But in this movie, they did. And it means that they can crack through any security system in the world, including the Federal Reserve and the airlines. They could crash 2 airplanes if they wanted to. So the whole drama is that they have to steal this. They know. I mean, see, they would give it a job. I don't want to give away the whole story. It's a good movie. It's a good kind of suspense spy movie, and it's just an amazing movie. And I think something like that could actually come true. So just think about that, because I know some math and I know something about the crypto systems, and I think it's possible that RSA could get cracked, particularly by quantum computers. The good news about quantum computers is that then it'll be possible to make a more secure security system that the quantum computers themselves won't be able to crack. But we have to make sure that we're not able to crack RSA, or that we have a more secure security system in place by the time we have quantum computers that could crack something like that. So just a heads up on that. Sneakers could come true. And then what's the next one? 1993, Schindler's List. I have no problem with picking this one as Best Picture. Uh, First movie, I think the first movie I know of about the Holocaust. And of course, the Holocaust was horrible, and the movie's pretty horrible. But it's good that someone finally made a movie about it. It's about time. I mean, they were talking about stuff that was happening around 1940, 41, till the end of World War II, the final solution. I guess the last 5 years of World War II, 1940, 1945, that's when the Nazis were trying to kill all the Jews in the world. And they show that. They show the concentration camps. And there's one guy, it's a true story. This guy Schindler. He's able to save the lives of like 1,100 Jews just by having a fake business, and being able to bribe the Nazis to hire some of these Jews in his fake company. Amazing story, and a true story, and a wonderful movie. And I think that was probably Steven Spielberg's best movie, and he's Jewish too. So kudos to Spielberg. Kudos to you for making this movie. And I'm glad that finally people can see firsthand the kind of things that were going on during the Holocaust. So yeah, that one I do agree with. And what's next? Amir. Oh, where am I? Forrest Gump. That was the one they picked for 1994. Forrest Gump was a really good movie. I mean, this is probably my second favorite movie of 1994. I love Forrest Gump. It's a funny movie, but I think it's also a very spiritual movie. Forrest Gump had a very strong spirit, even though he was retarded. Even though he had an IQ of 75. He had a very strong spirit. He kind of knew the things he needed to know about life, the things that mattered, like his mother, the people he's close to, his mother, his girlfriend Jenny, his friend Bubba, from Vietnam, who died in Vietnam, unfortunately, is his Lieutenant Dan, who was in charge of his platoon in Vietnam. He ends up becoming shrimping boat partners with, and you know. Those were the only things in his life that really mattered. The people he was close to. It didn't matter to him all this other stuff. That he met three presidents and became a multi-millionaire, founding the Bubba Gump Shrimp, and helped our relations with China and influenced Elvis Presley and John Lennon. And none of that stuff mattered to him. And in the long run, none of that stuff really did matter. What mattered was the stuff that mattered to him. So he was smart enough. And I would have picked that as Best Picture if it weren't for The Shawshank Redemption. I think The Shawshank Redemption was a little bit better, just a little bit. I mean, The Shawshank Redemption. Some people think that's the greatest movie of all time. I wouldn't go that far. It's probably my top 50, maybe even my top 20. Shawshank Redemption is an amazing story, and it's a very serious movie, unlike Forrest Gump. And I think something like that could happen and probably has happened to a lot of people. But I think the moral of the Shawshank Redemption, you guys have to see it. But I think the moral of the Shawshank Redemption is never give up hope. No matter how down and out you got. This was an innocent guy who got framed for a double murder, would have had to spend his whole life in this horrible prison. Except due to his strong spirit, he manages to escape, and he even helps his friend, his best friend, who was in prison with him, played by Morgan Freeman. Amazing movie. One of my favorites. Anyway, let's keep going. So 1997, Titanic. This was an excellent movie. And I do agree with Hollywood's pick for this one. I think it was the best picture of 1997. You know, tragic story. We all know the story, the Titanic. It sunk after hitting an iceberg. But that's not really what the movie's about. The movie's about this love story between, uh, the woman, I can't remember her name in the movie, but the woman played by Kate Winslet and her boyfriend played by Leonardo DiCaprio, who just got lucky and got a ticket on the Titanic. And even before the ship sinks, he says, "This is the best thing that's ever happened to me in my life." Pretty amazing. He knows they're gonna die, but he doesn't care. Just the fact that he had this one wonderful night of romance with Kate Winslet in that movie, that made his whole life worthwhile. Pretty amazing. And I love that movie. And in a way, it's a true story because the woman that Kate Winslet was supposed to portray really, it was a real woman, and she actually survived the Titanic. And they even show who's supposed to be her at the at the end of the movie. And wonderful movie. So that one I do agree with. And then 1998, this was another really good one, Shakespeare in Love. I love this movie. I mean, I don't know how true it is, but according to the movie, this was how Shakespeare was inspired to write Romeo and Juliet. He had a love affair of his own, very similar. And it's kind of about how he was as a playwright and a play producer. And a wonderful movie, wonderful story. And I really love the acting. I think it was what's her name? Gwyneth Paltrow, I believe, was the actress in that movie. She does a really excellent job. I can't remember who played Shakespeare. Another really famous actor. I just can't remember his name, but it was a very good movie and a very good story. So I do really like that one. What's next? 1999. This one I'm not so crazy about. American Beauty. Weird movie. I mean, not a terrible movie. It was interesting in a lot of ways, but I think it was overrated. Very bizarre story. Basically, just about this unhappy married man and his affair with a teenage girl, and I don't know. I mean, I guess it goes into some nuances of life, but I think it was overrated. And then what was the movie I picked instead of that one? October Sky. I don't know how many guys saw October Sky. I think it's a really excellent movie. It's about a rocketeer, like about a kid whose father was a coal miner. His dad wants him to be a coal miner. He lives in this poor town in West Virginia, but he dabbles in rocketry as a hobby. He watches Sputnik go off October 4th, 1957. He's inspired enough to build his own rockets. And he becomes an amazing rocketeer. I mean, I don't think it's a true story, but something like that could have happened, and I think it's a very inspirational story. Beginning of the space race. I mean, God, one of my favorite movies, and I don't even that one wasn't even nominated for Best Picture. I don't know why. Then what else? 1999, 2000. The one that won Best Picture 2000 was Gladiator. I saw this one. I wasn't thrilled by it. It wasn't even historically accurate. I mean, I think it was about Marcus Aurelius, if I'm not mistaken, one of the late, um, Roman emperors in some big epic battle he fought. And it was supposed to take place at the very end of the Roman Empire. Sorry to disappoint you guys, but Marcus Aurelius lived in the 3rd century AD, about 200 years before the end of the Roman Empire. So it's not even historically accurate. It's off by about 200 years. And I didn't even think it was that good a story. So I don't think that was a good pick. And the one that I picked for Best Picture of 2000, The Family Man, with Nicolas Cage and what's her name? Tia Leone. A lot like Capra. It's a Wonderful Life in reverse in a way. And I mentioned I think It's a Wonderful Life is my favorite movie of all time. Well, this kind of plays on that. It's kind of that backwards. He's a billionaire. I mean, he starts out as this really rich and successful billionaire on Wall Street, But it turns out that he made the wrong decision. He was madly in love with this woman when he was in college, but he ditched her in order to become a billionaire on Wall Street. But then he realizes he has a guardian angel that showed him and he made the wrong decision. Shows him what could have happened if he didn't become a billionaire, if he stayed with his girlfriend and married her, and they would have had this wonderful life together. And I guess the whole point of the movie was to prove that this would have been a wonderful life. And of course, it was just a glimpse. He couldn't end up in that universe. But that wasn't the point. That wasn't the reason the angels granted him that wish. The reason was to he make him come to his senses and make him realize he made the wrong decision. So at the very end of the movie, he makes the right decision. He leaves Wall Street, goes back to his former girlfriend. They fall in love, and live happily ever after. Of course, he is still a billionaire. I guess that helps. But I think that was a really good movie, kind of Capra-esque in a way. And it's interesting. Nicolas Cage was in another Capra-esque movie I really love. This one isn't on my list here, but It Could Happen to You. I love that movie. I mean, very Capra-esque story. I'm not gonna say anything about it. I love that movie. That's with Bridget Fonda and kind of a fairy tale romance between them, but a very Capra-esque story. That is another one I would highly recommend for you guys. So anyway, enough of that. Then what's next? Uh, oh, A Beautiful Mind. This is a masterpiece. This one I do completely agree with Hollywood's choice for Best Picture. This is about a very famous. This is true, based on a true story about a very famous mathematician named John Nash. And unfortunately, John Nash was schizophrenic. He was one of the greatest math geniuses of all time, I think. He was one of the pioneers of game theory, along with John von Neumann, who I'm not so crazy about. But John Nash was amazing. But unfortunately, he was mentally ill in addition to being an amazing genius. And he had all these delusions. This was what the movie's about. The whole first half of the movie is about his delusions, where he thinks that there's this big Soviet conspiracy, and it's so believable that the first time I saw this movie, I thought the first half of the movie was really happening. It turned out it was all in his mind, and the whole then the rest of the movie is about how he has to recover from his schizophrenia, and his wife helps him do that. And they would have had him committed if it weren't for his wife. So kudos to his wife. Wonderful story, true story. And he ended up winning the Nobel Prize in economics. And the reason he didn't win a Nobel Prize in math is because there is no Nobel Prize in math. There's a Fields Medal. And the reason, at least the reason I've heard there's no Nobel Prize in math is because Alfred Nobel had a friend who was a mathematician who his wife cheated on with him. And he punished the whole mathematical community by not having a Nobel Prize in math. Pretty crazy. But anyway, there is a Nobel Prize in economics. A number of mathematicians have won it, including John Nash. And I'm glad he was able to get his life together. The tragic end, which wasn't in this movie, is that both he and his wife were killed by a crazy taxi driver who ran into them and ran him out over a guardrail. Horrible ending to his life and his wife. But I love John Nash. I mean, I think he's another kind of tragic figure, but at least he was able to get his life back in gear towards the end of his life. And he did win a Nobel Prize, and I'm glad he did. And I'm glad his wife was so wonderful to him. You know, wonderful movie. And what's next? Chicago. That was the best picture of 2002. It's another movie I really like a lot. I don't think they make enough musicals anymore. There have been a few really good ones in recent years. This is one of them. Chicago is a pretty amazing movie. It's about the old days of Chicago. It's with Catherine Zeta-Jones and what's her name? Geez, I can't remember the other woman's name right now. But they're these two actresses who act together in kind of the vaudeville days of Chicago. Yeah, it's driving me crazy. I can't think of that actress's name. She's been in a lot of movies. She was in Down with Love. What's her name? Jesus. Oh God. Anyway, it's a good movie. It's a very, very good movie, and I know it's unique. It's not like any other musical I've ever seen. I don't know if you guys noticed this, who've seen this movie, but every song in the movie is featured on stage, like they're performing it on stage. Pretty amazing, and it's a good story too. So I did really like Chicago. I just wish I could remember that actress's name. I'm sure you guys probably know who I'm talking about. But yeah, just can't remember her name. But anyway, what's next? Crash, 2005. Crash was pretty good. Crash was mostly about prejudice in modern society. There's a lot of pretty horrible racism in that movie, and just how everybody deals with it. The worst part is this horribly racist police officer who wrongfully arrests innocent black couples because he doesn't like blacks and even molests the wife. Pretty horrible. And there's a lot of other shit that goes on in that movie too. Pretty powerful movie, but I didn't think it was the best picture of the year. The one I thought was best was The Producers. You guys might laugh at me for this. Producers was a remake of a movie in 1968 by Mel Brooks. It was a comedy. It was a black comedy. But I really love this movie. And in case you guys don't know the story, Producers is about these two Broadway producers, kind of failed producers. They can't produce any good movies. Every movie they ever try, every play they try to produce, nobody likes. So then they get this screwball plan to make the worst play ever made, Springtime for Hitler. There was this crazy playwright that wrote a play called Springtime for Hitler, in which Hitler's the hero. The guy who wrote the play said Springtime, he wants to prove to the world what a wonderful man Hitler was, with a song in his heart, what a wonderful, loving man he was. And he wants to make a play to show the world that. And they know this is going to be just a total flop. So they do it. They find not only the worst the writer, they hire the writer of Springtime for Hitler. They also fire the worst director they can find, this gay director. I mean, this movie was made. The original was made in '68 when I guess there was still a lot of, anti homosexuality. But yeah, they hire a gay director and they hire what else? The worst actors they can find. In the original, in the '68, they hire a hippie to play Hitler, which I thought was hilarious. I mean, this hippie's trying to audition for something like Hair, and they use him to play Hitler, which I think is really really hilarious. But in the remake, they actually hire the director, the gay director, to play Hitler, which is also pretty funny. But it's a hilarious story, and I don't know if I'm going to give the whole story away. It turns out to be a hit. That's the weird thing about it. It becomes a hit because they interpret it as a satire, and it's hilarious. I mean, I love both versions. I don't know which I like better. They sing a song called "Springtime for Hitler." I'm just gonna sing a few bars of it. Only Mel Brooks could come up with something like this, and he was Jewish, by the way. So it starts out "Springtime for Hitler and Germany." Winter for Poland and France. And then it just keeps going on. They do dancing. They even do a swastika formation while they're dancing. Hilarious. And, so it becomes a hit. Everybody laughs at it, and the whole plan backfires. And I just think it's a hilarious story. And I think they did an even better job in the remake. The remake was a musical. The first one wasn't really a musical. It only had a couple of songs in it. The remake was all music. And it even has a happy ending. I'm not going to give away the ending. At the end of the original, they end up in jail. But they still produce plays from jail, which I guess isn't a totally unhappy ending. But in the remake, it has a happier ending. I'm not even going to tell you what happens, but I love the story, and I love both movies. I think I actually like the remake better, even though most people don't think it was a very good movie. I think it was an excellent movie. And who else? The guy who plays the playwright. I love him. Will Ferrell. Will Ferrell is this former Nazi who lives on the roof of this abandoned building in New York City with all these pigeons. And he's hilarious in that. He has a song called the Guten Hop Clop. He says that was Hitler's famous song and even performs it for them. They have to wear swastikas. They have to swear the Siegfried oath. And so they make them wear swastikas, and then they made them dance the Guten Hab Clop on the roof of this abandoned building in New York City. Hilarious. Only something that Mel Brooks could come up with. So that I think they should have picked as best picture. Kind of a comic relief from Schindler's List, I guess. But anyway, let me just keep going on. What's next? Slumdog Millionaire. That was the one they picked for Best Picture of 2008. That was a good movie. It was good acting, good story. I especially like the Indian actor, the one who ends up winning on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. That's what the movie's about. He's a poor no, he's a poor kid from India who ends up and it takes place in India, by the way. I guess India has their own version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Turns out that he wins because he firsthand experiences every correct answer that to every question they give him on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So I thought it was a cute story. A little far fetched, kind of like Forrest Gump, but I still liked it. Um, but I didn't think it was the best picture of 2008. The one I picked as best picture was Cadillac Records. You guys can probably tell I like movies about old rock and roll, and Cadillac Records is a really good one. It's about some of the early pioneers of, black pioneers of rock and roll. I think even Chuck Berry is depicted in the movie, and I think a lot of other famous people like Muddy Waters. I don't remember who was in the movie, who was supposed to be in the movie, but I thought it was good. I do remember one interesting scene I liked. This black label. I guess they were supposed to be like Chess Records. They were called. I think there was a Cadillac label actually. So I think there is some truth to this movie. But they came up with a soul hit in the early '60s, which it kind of went. It was like a number one soul song. It even started going up the pop charts. But then a group that was supposed to be the Beach Boys remade it as a white hit. And I thought it was hilarious. Kind of like, that actually happened. The Beach Boys remade Surfin' USA. It was originally Sweet Little 16 by Chuck Berry, but they rewrote it as Surfin' USA, so it became a big white person's hit on the West Coast, kind of like the hit in the movie that became a big white hit. I thought that was interesting. Anyway, so I did like that movie. What else? 2010, The King's Speech. This one was okay. It was about King George the Sixth, who had a speech impediment and how he had to get speech coaching so he could speak on the radio because otherwise he'd make a fool of himself. And it's a true story, and it was kind of good. I mean, in some ways, a little like My Fair Lady. He had to get coaching so he could speak. He even had to have the marbles in his mouth like Audrey Hepburn did in My Fair Lady. There was some ancient Greek who had to do that for some crazy reason, but they used it on King George the Sixth, and I guess it worked for him. Maybe it worked for Eliza too. I don't know, but anyway, I didn't think that was the best movie of the year. The one I liked better was Get Him to the Greek. You guys might laugh at that one. That was a pretty crazy comedy about this kind of has been rock star who wants to have a comeback, and they have to. I think it was some editors for the Rolling Stone who try to make him popular again by getting him to Greek theater to perform a concert, kind of a reunion concert. And the guy's so crazy; they have all the crazy shenanigans with him. He's a drug addict, like most rock stars, and he has this whole thing about the Jeffrey, which is kind of a Neapolitan of all drugs, and one of the guys ends up taking it, and he thinks he's gonna die from it. No, he doesn't. But pretty crazy. I mean, kind of a black comedy, but I really liked it. I just thought it was a pretty crazy comedy that was very entertaining. And what else? Um, 2011, The Artist. This was a really excellent movie. Not my favorite of the year. The Artist was a silent movie, and it was actually take took place in the 1920s when they were making silent movies. It was a silent movie about the old days of silent movies, and I think they did a really good job with it. You'll have to see it to see for yourself. Um, that was a good one. It wasn't my favorite of the year. My favorite of the year, hands down, was Midnight in Paris. I think this was Woody Allen's best movie. He wasn't in it, but I think this is the best movie he ever made. Amazing movie, amazing story. I might as well tell you the premise. So, it involves time travel. It's about this writer played by what's his name? I can never remember his name. That blonde. He was in. Um, he's been in a number of really good movies. He was in The Wedding Crashers. He was also in the remake of Around the World in 80 Days. Owen Wilson. Yeah, he's the one. He's supposed to be Woody Allen, basically, in this movie. He's a writer who's not happy with his job. He's a successful Hollywood film writer. He's about to get married to this kind of superficial woman from L.A. They take a trip to Paris together. He's meeting her parents, who are really, really stuffy, snobby Republicans. Very, very unlike Owen Wilson's character in this movie, who's more liberal and more, but he's obsessed with the 1920s. He thinks the 1920s was the golden age of Paris. And what happens in the movie is that every night at midnight, he actually goes back in time to the 1920s, and he gets to meet all the famous people who were in Paris then, like like um, what's his name? The guy who wrote The Great Gatsby and his wife, the Fitzgeralds. Yeah, yeah. F. Scott Fitzgerald and his wife, Zelda Fitzgerald. He meets them at a party in the 1920s, and Cole Porter's singing, and he meets just about every famous person who was in Paris during the 1920s. Ernest Hemingway. Who else? Salvador Dali. I don't even remember. Oh yeah, yeah. Gertrude Stein. Gertrude Stein agrees to publish his story. He falls in love. He falls in love with this beautiful model. This model for Picasso. Yeah, he meets Picasso too. Amazing movie. I think I've given too much of it away already. But he learns a valuable lesson at the end of the movie, which is there really is no golden age. It's this golden age thinking that's flawed. We think, I think he says, the the present seems a little unsatisfying because life's a little unsatisfying. But he finally comes to the realization that there's no golden age. Every age, no matter how well romanticized it is from the past, had its share of problems. And I agree with that. As a matter of fact, I would say even more. I'd say that the history of the world has been kind of a gradual improvement. It doesn't seem like that today, but I'd say things have been getting better and better for the most part. I don't think there's any real time in the past I'd rather be living in, except for maybe the 1960s. I would have liked to have been a hippie in the 1960s. That's about the only thing I can think of. But no, I mean, I think we just got to make the best of the world we're living in now. We can't go back in time. So we might as well make the best of the present. Um, Anyway, enough of that. I love Midnight in Paris. And what's next? Um, oh, yeah, 2013, 12 Years a Slave. I saw this one. I think it was overrated. Yeah, it's a realistic movie about how horrible slavery was. Um, and we know slavery was terrible. I don't think we need another movie to tell us that. It was an okay movie. I mean, it was good acting, good drama. But the one I liked better from that year was Her. You guys might laugh at that one. I am a big sci-fi fan, and Her, I think something like that could happen. This guy in kind of the near future. I don't know when the movie's supposed to take place. I'm guessing sometime maybe mid to late 21st century. So, we get to the point where we have intelligent operating systems. So intelligent, in fact, that the guy who buys this one ends up falling in love with it. And, just like a real woman to him. He can't fall in love with real women until the very end of the movie. Finally comes to his senses and does. Falls in love with Amy Adams, who I think is really gorgeous, by the way. She kind of sets him straight. So that I really like. Amy Adams has been in a number of really good movies. I really liked her in Enchanted. She's been in a number of really good movies. She was in Charlie Wilson's A Wall of War, which I wasn't really crazy about. But she's been in a lot of other good movies. But I think her was her best. And what else? 2014. The one they nominated, they won the one was Birdman. I don't even know the full title. I saw this movie. Pretty crazy movie. It was about a guy going insane, basically. The only thing I liked about this movie was, I mean, besides the fact that it's kind of from his point of view, but it also, I don't know if you noticed, there's no edits in this movie. There's no part of the movie where they switch scenes, where the camera switches from one scene to another. It's a continuous stream. And I think there's only one other movie I know that's like that. I think Alfred Hitchcock made a movie called Rope. I never saw that movie, but I heard Rope is the same thing. There are no edits in Rope. It's a continuous stream. Maybe I have to see Rope one of these days. I do really like Alfred Hitchcock. And that was the only good thing I liked about Birdman. But the movie, I thought, I mean, hands down, this is my favorite from 2014, The Imitation Game. I mean, this is a true story, and I think this one should have won Best Picture. This is about Alan Turing, who's one of my idols. I think he is one of the most tragic figures I know of. Probably the most tragic mathematical figure I know of. I mean, he died at age 41. He was one of the most amazing geniuses, one of the most amazing math geniuses I know. I mean, he did three really, really remarkable things. First of all, he came up with what's called the Church-Turing thesis. He actually he figured out the principle behind computing. He came up with the whole idea of Turing machines, which are theoretical devices, which are basically computers. The whole principle behind classical computation is based on his idea that he came up with about Turing machines in 1936. So we owe computers to Turing. That's the first thing we owe to him. And also he worked at Bletchley Park during World War II. He was a code breaker during World War II. He figured out how to break the Enigma, the secret code the Nazis were using during World War II. He had to keep it a secret because he even knew he had to keep it a secret because he didn't, first of all, he didn't want the Germans to catch on to the fact that we knew how to break their code because then they would have just gotten a new code. So he had to keep it a secret during World War II. That I understand. The sad part was that the government still wanted him to keep it a secret after World War II, which I don't think he had to do because I guess they were worried we might have another war. And it was during the Cold War. I guess we didn't want the Russians to know that Turing figured out how to break Enigma. From then on, it just got worse. And then they finally got him on homosexuality, which was a crime in England at that time. Horrible. They just horribly mistreated him. He was one of the greatest people ever lived, in my opinion. They estimate that he saved the lives of about 14 million allies during World War II. He's probably the third greatest figure of World War II. I think the first two were FDR and Winston Churchill. And then I think the third was Alan Turing. I think we still would have won World War II if it weren't for him, but they estimated it would have lasted another 2 years and would have cost him more lives of about 14 million allies. So kudos to Turing, and I hope he's having a better life now. I do believe in reincarnation. For all I know, maybe I'm his reincarnation. I don't think I am, but it'd be kind of nice if I was. Uh, um, but no, I just think he was just so horribly mistreated and misunderstood, and I just think it's so sad what happened to him. He committed suicide, by the way, because his punishment for being gay was that he had a choice of either being locked up for 10 years or having to undergo chemical castration. He chose chemical castration. which made him impotent, and he killed himself 2 years later. So sad. And I don't know if you guys realize this, but the Apple logo is based on you've seen the Apple logo, the picture of the apple with a bite on it, the kind of um, rainbow colored apple with a bite on it. Steve Jobs came up with that logo in 1977, I believe, and his inspiration for it was Alan Turing's suicide. Very, very sad. But anyway, enough of that. What's next? Um, 2015, Spotlight. Spotlight was a very good movie. It wasn't my favorite from that year, but it was an excellent movie. It was a true story about how the church in Boston was involved in all this child molestation for 30 years. They were keeping a secret that all these priests were molesting children, and the children couldn't speak about it for 30 years. They finally started coming out about it, and they finally nailed the church. It was about time. I mean, and that's not the only bad thing the church has done. I mean, they convicted Galileo, and they didn't even apologize for that until 1969, when nobody could deny anymore that the Earth wasn't the center of the universe. No, I'm not a fan of the Catholic Church. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I've offended a lot of you guys here. I'm not religious. I don't believe in mainstream religion, not even Judaism. I'm not a fan of mainstream Judaism either. And I don't like what Israel's doing. You know, I mean, like I said, Gandhi and Martin Luther King. Israel needs to learn a lesson from Gandhi and Martin Luther King. Civil disobedience. If they want to have a Jewish state, a Jewish homeland, then just don't do what the Arabs want you to do. Just sit down and do your own thing. That's what I think. I am a fan of Israel. I am Jewish. I think the Jews need a homeland, but not by violence. We don't need to earn it through violence. That's not what God wants. God, if you believe in the Bible, the sixth commandment, thou shalt not murder. Just remember that. So anyway, enough of that. Enough of me knocking down religion. But no, I did think Spotlight was an excellent movie for that reason. But the movie I liked even better from 2015 was The Martian. And The Martian was an amazing movie. The only thing I didn't like about it is that they did make a mistake in The Martian. The atmosphere on Mars is only 1/100th of the Earth's atmosphere. It wouldn't be possible to have a hurricane on Mars that could knock down a, a a space station there. So that they got wrong. But the rest of the movie I loved. I think it is a plausible story, except how he got stranded on Mars, and um, just amazing story of courage and survival. How he manages to survive on Mars and even get back to Earth, and how the rest of his crew manages to save him. I love that movie. So that I do agree. That was the one I thought should have won for Best Picture for 2015. And I'm almost done. Only a couple more, or three more, I guess. Yeah, 2021. CODA. CODA, which is an acronym for Children of Deaf Adults. This is an amazing movie. I only saw it once, but I love this movie. And I know that one of the adults, though, the mother of the main character, I don't remember her name. She is deaf in real life. She was in another really excellent movie called Children of a Lesser God. I don't know how many of you guys saw that one. She's an amazing actress. She is deaf in real life. And I think she did an amazing job in both of these movies. And her daughter, the one who played her daughter, did too. I have to see this movie again. Unfortunately, I can't get it on Netflix for some reason, but no, I love this movie. And another thing I love about the movie, the one who plays her daughter, she sings a version of Both Sides Now, originally written by Joni Mitchell and recorded by Judy Collins. An excellent folk song. And she did, I think the actress, whoever that was, who played her daughter, she sings the best version I've heard of that song, even better than Joni Mitchell and Judy Collins. Very moving performance of that song. And I love that movie. And I have to see it again. And my last one, last year, the last pick, which the Academy Awards was just 3 weeks ago, I think, March 12th. The one they picked for Best Picture, Oppenheimer. I do agree with that pick. Oppenheimer was an amazing movie, and he's another tragic figure, by the way. Robert Oppenheimer, father of the atomic bomb. He was a pacifist. I mean, the only reason he worked on the atomic bomb was to try to defeat the Nazis, and I'm all for him for that. So was Einstein. Even though Einstein was a pacifist his whole life, he was the one that wrote a letter to FDR urging him to work on the atomic bomb because he knew that the Nazis would work on their own version, which they didn't. They didn't get very far with it. I think the tragic thing about the aftermath of the atomic bomb, the Manhattan Project, is that we didn't use it on the Nazis. I wish we had. I mean, maybe this is going to sound really harsh to you guys, but I wish Germany hadn't surrendered before we could have used it on them. I think if we'd bombed Berlin, if Hitler had been in the middle of it, that would have been a fitting end for him and all the Nazis who supported him. Unfortunately, we ended up using on Hiroshima, which I think was a big mistake. Um, yeah, and I think Oppenheimer did too, and the aftermath, what happened after. It was bad enough that he had all the guilt about bombing Hiroshima, but then he had to worry about McCarthyism, which was even worse. I mean, he got discredited by the government. He had to resign from his position in the government because they blacklisted him because he used to be involved with the Communist Party. So did his brother, by the way. I'm just going to say one more thing before I get off. I used to work at this very famous science museum in San Francisco when I was a teenager called the Exploratorium. You might have heard of it. I think one of my favorite science museums in the world is the world's first hands on science museum. I learned a lot about what I know about science from working there and from visiting there when I was a kid. And his brother, Frank Oppenheimer, was the founder of the Exploratorium in San Francisco. At least he was able to do something good with life. He got blacklisted too by the government because he was even more involved with the Communist Party than Robert. Robert, I don't think, actually became a member. Frank was a member of the Communist Party. And he got blacklisted like his brother. He had to live on a ranch in Kansas, I think, for about 15 years in the 50s and early 60s. But finally, he decided to make something good out of his life. So he decided to found the Exploratorium in San Francisco, which was the world's first hands on science museum. And kudos to Frank Oppenheimer for that. At least he did something good with the end of his life. So there's hope, you know? Even if you're wrongfully blacklisted or, a wrong end of a target of a horrible witch hunt like the McCarthyism, you can still do something good with your life after you're ruined. Just remember that. So anyway, that's my that concludes this video. My reviews of what I think should have been the best pictures of every year of Hollywood from 1938 to 2023. I hope you enjoyed it. That's also the conclusion of my profile on Everybody's Talkin' by Nilsson, which was featured in Best Picture of 1969, Midnight Cowboy. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this series, and I'll see you guys next time.